Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going back to December 1952, when a thick, yellow fog swallowed the streets of London and turned everyday life into a deadly nightmare. Known as the Great Smog of London, this single event shocked the world and changed environmental policy forever. What caused it, and how did it claim so many lives in just a few days? Let's find out. In the years following the Second World War, London was a city shaped by recovery, industry, and habit. Bomb damage remained visible across neighborhoods, yet daily life had resumed. Factories operated at full capacity, homes relied on coal for heat, and the city functioned beneath a constant haze that few questioned. Coal was central to London's existence. It heated homes, powered industry, and fueled electricity generation. Millions of coal fires burned daily across the city, releasing smoke, soot, and sulfur compounds into the air. This pollution was not new. Londoners had lived with smoke for centuries, referring to it as pea soup fog, a familiar feature of urban life. Industrial pollution blended with natural fog to create thick, yellowish air that reduced visibility and irritated lungs. Yet these conditions were largely accepted as unavoidable. Smoke symbolized productivity and warmth. Clear air was not an expectation. By the early 1950s, London's population exceeded 8 million. Dense housing, narrow streets, and limited ventilation trapped pollutants close to ground level. Most homes relied on low-quality coal, producing especially dirty emissions. Chimneys blanketed entire districts with soot. Medical understanding of air pollution was limited. Respiratory illnesses were common, particularly among the elderly and young, but few linked them directly to air quality. Deaths from bronchitis and pneumonia were routine and rarely questioned. Weather patterns often worsened conditions. Calm air and cold temperatures prevented smoke from dispersing. Still, such episodes passed quickly. No precedent existed for a prolonged, citywide atmospheric crisis. Government policy reflected this mindset. Industrial output was prioritized over environmental concerns. Regulations on emissions were minimal. Pollution was viewed as an unfortunate but necessary byproduct of progress. London's infrastructure reinforced vulnerability. Public transportation relied on diesel and coal. Buildings were designed without regard for air circulation. Hospitals lacked preparedness for environmental emergencies. Social habits also played a role. During winter, coal consumption increased sharply. December was among the heaviest months for emissions. Cold weather meant more fires, more smoke, and thick air. Despite these conditions, daily life continued uninterrupted. Shops opened, buses ran, and pedestrians navigated streets as best they could. Pollution was an inconvenience, not a crisis. This normalization of polluted air created dangerous complacency. When conditions worsened, warnings were neither issued nor expected. The city had endured fog before and survived. But December 1952 would prove different. A unique combination of weather conditions, pollution levels, and urban structure would transform familiar smog into a lethal phenomenon, one that London was entirely unprepared to confront. The city stood on the edge of disaster, unaware that the air itself was about to become deadly. In early December 1952, London entered a period of cold weather that appeared unremarkable by seasonal standards. Winter had arrived, and with it came an increase in coal consumption across the city. Homes, offices, and factories burned fuel continuously to combat the cold. Under normal circumstances, the smoke produced by these activities would disperse gradually into the atmosphere. This time, however, the weather behaved differently. A high-pressure system settled over southern England, creating stable atmospheric conditions. Winds slowed to near stillness, and the air above London became stratified. Instead of rising and dispersing, Pollutants were trapped close to the ground. This phenomenon, known as temperature inversion, would play a decisive role in what followed. Under temperature inversion, a layer of warmer air sits above colder air near the surface. This warmer layer acts as a lid, preventing vertical air movement. Smoke, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter released at ground level cannot escape upward. As emissions continue, pollution accumulates rapidly. On December 5, 1952, fog began to form over London. Fog itself was not unusual, but this fog combined with unprecedented levels of smoke. As the day progressed, visibility dropped sharply. Streets disappeared into a dense yellow-black haze. By evening, visibility in some areas was reduced to a few feet. The absence of wind ensured that the smog remained stationary. Overnight, temperatures dropped further, increasing coal use and intensifying emissions. Chimneys poured smoke directly into the trapped air mass. Industrial plants continued operations without interruption. The city unknowingly fed the growing disaster. Meteorological conditions remained unchanged over the following days. The high-pressure system persisted. No storms arrived to clear the air. The inversion strengthened, sealing the pollutants over the city. The chemical composition of the smog grew increasingly dangerous. Sulfur dioxide levels rose sharply as coal combustion continued. In the presence of moisture, sulfur dioxide converted into sulfuric acid aerosols, creating an acidic fog that penetrated deep into the lungs when inhaled. The color of the smog darkened. Witnesses later described it as thick, oily, and suffocating. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the cloud. Even during daylight hours, streets remained dim, lit only by lamps and vehicle headlights. Transportation systems began to fail. Drivers could not see the road. Trains slowed or stopped entirely. Aircraft were grounded. The smog disrupted the city's physical movement, but its invisible effects were even more severe. Despite worsening conditions, no immediate emergency response was initiated. Fog warnings were routine, and the severity of the situation was not yet recognized. Authorities lacked both the data and the precedent to interpret the unfolding event as a public health emergency. Hospitals did not receive advance notice. Medical staff were unprepared for the surge in respiratory distress that would soon arrive. Ambulances struggled to navigate streets where visibility was nearly non-existent. The weather forecast offered no relief. Each day, the same calm, cold conditions persisted. The inversion layer remained intact, and the smog thickened further. London had effectively become an enclosed chamber filled with toxic air. By December the 6th and 7th, the smog reached its peak. People struggled to breathe. The air carried a sharp, acrid taste. Eyes burned, and coughing became widespread. Vulnerable populations, particularly the elderly, children, and those with pre-existing respiratory conditions, were at greatest risk. Yet life continued. Workers attempted to reach jobs. Shops opened briefly before closing. The scale of danger remained poorly understood. Deaths began to occur quietly, attributed to common winter illnesses. The weather, indifferent and invisible, had transformed a familiar nuisance into a lethal force. The smog did not arrive with violence. It did not announce itself with noise or destruction. It settled slowly, silently, and completely. London was trapped beneath it. As December 1952 progressed, the smog that had formed over London ceased to behave like ordinary fog. What initially appeared as a familiar inconvenience transformed into an overwhelming presence that altered every aspect of urban life. By December 6, the city was enveloped in a dense atmospheric blanket that resisted all attempts at navigation, ventilation, and escape. Visibility deteriorated to unprecedented levels. In some areas, pedestrians could not see their own feet. Drivers abandoned vehicles in the middle of roads, unable to proceed safely. Public transport systems collapsed as buses and trams were forced to stop. Train services were curtailed or halted altogether. London's mobility, essential to its functioning, was effectively paralyzed. The smog penetrated buildings with ease. Doors and windows offered no protection. Indoors, the air was thick and acrid. Curtains, furniture, and walls became coated with soot. The boundary between inside and outside dissolved as the atmosphere infiltrated homes, offices, theaters, and hospitals alike. Cultural life came to a standstill. Cinemas closed because audiences could not see screens through the haze inside the halls. Performances were cancelled. Schools suspended classes. Sporting events were abandoned. The city's social rhythms broke down as normal activities became impossible. Street lighting lost its effectiveness. Lamps glowed weakly within the murk, illuminating only small pockets of space. Navigation became a matter of memory rather than sight. Londoners familiar with their neighborhoods still struggled to orient themselves. Strangers became disoriented almost immediately. The smog's physical presence was accompanied by a profound sensory experience. It carried a sharp, sulfurous smell that irritated the eyes and throat. Breathing became laborious. Coughing was constant. Many described a sensation of choking or pressure in the chest. The air itself felt heavy. Animals were among the first visible victims. Livestock at markets collapsed and died. Birds fell from the sky. These deaths occurred quietly, without public notice, but they were early indicators of the smog's lethality. Despite these signs, there was no immediate recognition of a citywide emergency. Fog was a known phenomenon in London, and its effects were often endured rather than questioned. The smog's unprecedented density was noted, but its danger was not fully understood. Emergency services struggled to operate. Ambulances moved slowly, guided by pedestrians walking ahead with lanterns. Response times increased dramatically. In some cases, help could not reach those in distress. Economic activity slowed sharply. Factories reduced operations as workers failed to arrive. Retail activity declined. Yet the smog itself continued to thicken, fueled by uninterrupted coal consumption. The atmospheric inversion remained firmly in place. With no wind to disperse pollutants, each hour added to the concentration of toxic compounds suspended above the city. Sulfur dioxide levels climbed far beyond typical winter readings. The chemical reactions occurring within the fog intensified its corrosive nature. At ground level, the smog behaved almost like a solid barrier. It pooled in low-lying areas, clung to streets, and settled into courtyards. Attempt to clear it mechanically or artificially proved futile. There was nowhere for the air to go. For many Londoners, the experience was disorienting and frightening. The familiar cityscape vanished. Landmarks disappeared. Even sounds seemed muffled, as if absorbed by the fog. The city felt smaller, enclosed, and claustrophobic. Yet daily routines persisted as long as possible. Some workers continued commuting on foot. Others remained at home, waiting for conditions to improve. Few realized that the air they were breathing was causing irreversible harm. Deaths occurred quietly and incrementally. Individuals with respiratory or cardiovascular conditions deteriorated rapidly. Others succumbed after short periods of exposure. These deaths were recorded under familiar diagnoses: bronchitis, pneumonia, heart failure, masking the true cause. The smog did not explode into disaster. It settled, lingered, and suffocated. London had entered a state of atmospheric siege, sealed beneath a layer of poisoned air. The city was alive, but struggling to breathe. The descent was complete. The fog had become a force of its own. As the Great Smog settled over London, daily life inside the city became a test of endurance. Ordinary activities, walking, working, seeking medical care, were transformed into hazardous undertakings. The fog was no longer an environmental backdrop. It became an active presence shaping every human interaction within the city. Movement through London was severely restricted. Pedestrians moved cautiously, often holding onto walls or following familiar routes by memory alone. Many carried handkerchiefs or scarves over their mouths in an attempt to filter the air, though such measures provided little protection. The act of breathing itself became conscious and laborious. Public transportation systems ceased functioning almost entirely. Buses were withdrawn from service after drivers found it impossible to see the road. Underground trains continued to operate in limited capacity, but station entrances were difficult to locate through the fog. Taxi drivers abandoned fares mid-journey, unable to proceed safely. Hospitals quickly became overwhelmed. Patients suffering from respiratory distress arrived in increasing numbers. Doctors and nurses struggled to cope with the surge. Beds filled rapidly. Corridors became treatment areas, and oxygen supplies were stretched thin. Many patients arrived too late for effective intervention. Medical staff observed patterns they had not encountered before. Patients presented with severe breathing difficulties, chest pain, and rapid deterioration. Individuals who had managed chronic respiratory conditions for years found themselves suddenly unable to breathe. The fog acted as a catalyst, exacerbating underlying illnesses. Inside homes, the smog offered no refuge. Smoke seeped through window frames, keyholes, and ventilation gaps. Indoor air quality deteriorated rapidly. Families reported soot settling on surfaces and a persistent smell that clung to clothing and furnishings. Children and the elderly were particularly vulnerable. Schools closed as visibility dropped and attendance declined. Many families kept children indoors, though indoor air was scarcely safer. Elderly residents, especially those living alone, were at high risk. Some were found unconscious or dead days later. Economic life faltered. Factories reduced operations or shut down temporarily as workers failed to arrive. Deliveries were delayed. Shops closed early or did not open at all. The city's commercial rhythm slowed to a near halt. Entertainment and public gatherings ceased. Cinemas closed because screens could not be seen through the haze. Theaters canceled performances. Sports events were postponed. Even indoor venues were affected as a fog infiltrated enclosed spaces. Emergency services faced unprecedented challenges. Ambulances moved at walking pace. Fire services responded to calls by following sound rather than sight. Police officers acted as guides, leading civilians through streets with flashlights. The psychological impact of the smog was profound. The loss of visibility created anxiety and disorientation. Familiar environments became alien. The absence of sunlight disrupted sleep patterns and heightened stress. The city felt enclosed and oppressive. Despite worsening conditions, official communication remained limited. Fog warnings were issued, but no clear guidance was provided regarding health risks. The population lacked information about protective measures or the severity of danger. Deaths continued quietly. Many occurred at home, unreported until days later. Death certificates listed familiar causes, obscuring the role of air pollution. The cumulative toll remained hidden within routine statistics. By December 9th, after several days of entrapment, weather conditions finally began to change. A shift in wind patterns dispersed the smog, lifting the atmospheric lid that had sealed the city. Visibility improved gradually. The fog receded. London emerged into clearer air, but the damage had already been done. Thousands had been exposed to lethal concentrations of pollutants. Many would die in the weeks that followed. Life inside the fog had revealed the fragility of urban existence when confronted with invisible threats. The city had survived bombardment during war, yet it had been brought to its knees by the air it breathed. The smog lifted without ceremony. Its presence faded. Its consequences did not. When the smog finally lifted in mid-December 1952, London appeared to return to normal. Visibility improved, transportation resumed, and daily routines slowly restarted. To many observers, the event seemed to have passed. There were no collapsed buildings, no mass burials, and no single moment that signaled catastrophe. Yet beneath the surface of normality, the true impact of the Great Smog was only beginning to emerge. Deaths during the smog did not occur in dramatic clusters. Instead, they accumulated quietly. Individuals died in homes, hospitals, and care facilities, often alone and without public notice. Medical records listed causes such as bronchitis, pneumonia, heart failure, and influenza, conditions common during winter months. As a result, the connection between the smog and mortality was not immediately recognized. In the days following the event, hospitals reported an unusually high number of deaths. Mortality rates, particularly among the elderly and those with pre-existing respiratory or cardiovascular conditions, rose sharply. However, without a framework to interpret environmental causes, these deaths were treated as seasonal anomalies. Statistical patterns gradually revealed the scale of the tragedy. Analysts reviewing death certificates noticed a significant spike beginning during the smog and continuing for weeks afterward. This delayed mortality reflected the smog's lingering effects on the lungs and heart. Many individuals who survived initial exposure succumbed later to complications. Early estimates suggested approximately 4,000 excess deaths directly attributable to the smog. This figure, though alarming, was conservative. It was based on immediate mortality and did not account for delayed deaths or long-term health impacts. Subsequent studies expanded this estimate. Epidemiological research conducted in later decades indicated that the true death toll may have exceeded 12,000. These findings redefined the Great Smog as one of the deadliest environmental disasters in modern urban history. The demographic distribution of deaths revealed clear patterns. The elderly were disproportionately affected, as were infants and individuals with chronic respiratory illnesses. Poorer districts, where housing quality was lower and coal use heavier, experienced higher mortality rates. The smog's impact was not evenly distributed across the city. Medical professionals began to recognize a new category of risk: environmental exposure. The idea that air quality alone could cause mass death challenged existing medical assumptions. This realization marked a turning point in public health understanding. Despite mounting evidence, official acknowledgement was slow. Government agencies hesitated to attribute deaths directly to pollution, partly due to economic concerns and partly due to institutional inertia. Coal remained essential to Britain's post-war economy, and questioning its use carried political consequences. The press played a crucial role in bringing attention to the death toll. Investigative reporting highlighted discrepancies in mortality data and questioned official explanations. Public awareness increased as the narrative shifted from inconvenience to catastrophe. Families who had lost loved ones sought answers. Many were told that death resulted from natural causes. The absence of clear recognition compounded grief and frustration. For them, the smog was not an abstract environmental event, but a personal tragedy. The silent nature of the disaster complicated commemoration. There was no single site of destruction, no anniversary marked by physical ruins. The Great Smog left behind numbers rather than monuments. Over time, scientific inquiry filled gaps left by official silence. Researchers examined air samples, hospital records, and mortality data to reconstruct the event's impact. Their findings reshaped understanding of environmental risk in industrial cities. The Great Smog demonstrated that modern urban life could produce lethal conditions without warning. It exposed the vulnerability of populations to invisible hazards and the inadequacy of existing safeguards. The deaths did not occur all at once. They unfolded quietly, one by one, hidden within routine records. By the time the scale of loss was fully understood, the smog itself was gone, but its imprint on London's population remained. In the immediate aftermath of the Great Smog, the response of government institutions and public authorities was marked by uncertainty, hesitation, and limited understanding. The disaster did not conform to existing models of emergency response. There had been no explosion, no flood, and no visible destruction. As a result, officials struggled to classify the event and to determine responsibility. During the smog itself, government intervention was minimal. Weather conditions were monitored, but fog was considered a routine phenomenon. No public health warnings were issued advising citizens to remain indoors or reduce exposure. The absence of precedent left authorities without clear protocols. Once the smog lifted and mortality data began to accumulate, questions emerged. Health officials observed abnormal increases in deaths and hospital admissions, particularly for respiratory conditions. However, linking these outcomes directly to air pollution required analytical tools that were still developing. The Ministry of Health initiated internal reviews. Data from hospitals and registries were examined, revealing patterns inconsistent with typical winter illness. These findings prompted concern but were not immediately communicated to the public. Public communication remained cautious. Official statements emphasized weather conditions rather than pollution. Coal usage, central to domestic heating and industrial production, was not publicly challenged. Economic recovery after the war remained a priority, influencing political messaging. The press gradually intensified scrutiny. Newspapers published reports highlighting excess mortality and questioning official explanations. Editorials called for investigation and accountability. Public awareness grew as the scale of the disaster became clearer. Parliamentary discussions followed. Members raised concerns about air quality, urban planning, and public health preparedness. Testimonies from medical professionals provided evidence of the smog's lethal effects. These debates marked a shift from denial toward acknowledgement. Scientific advisory committees were convened to study the event. Meteorologists, chemists, and physicians collaborated to analyze atmospheric conditions and health outcomes. Their findings confirmed the role of sulfur dioxide and particulate matter in causing widespread respiratory failure. Public reaction evolved alongside these revelations. Anger replaced confusion. Citizens demanded action to prevent recurrence. The idea that everyday practices, such as heating homes with coal, could be deadly challenged deeply ingrained habits. Despite growing pressure, change was gradual. Policy reform required balancing health concerns against economic realities. Coal industries held significant influence, and alternatives were limited in the early 1950s. Nevertheless, the Great Smog marked a turning point. It forced recognition that environmental conditions could constitute a public health emergency. Government responsibility expanded to include air quality regulation. The event also altered public expectations. Citizens began to view clean air as a matter of safety rather than comfort. This shift laid the groundwork for future legislation. The response to the Great Smog was neither swift nor decisive. It unfolded through investigation, debate, and gradual acceptance. Yet it represented the beginning of a new relationship between government, environment, and public health. The disaster exposed institutional blind spots. It demonstrated that threats need not be dramatic to be deadly. The slow response became part of the smog's legacy. London had survived the fog. Its institutions had been tested. The question now was whether lessons would be learned. Determining the true number of deaths caused by the Great Smog of London proved to be one of the most complex aspects of the disaster. Unlike sudden catastrophes, the smog did not produce an immediate and easily measurable toll. Instead, mortality unfolded gradually, dispersed across time, location, and medical classification. As a result, the process of counting the dead required retrospective analysis rather than real-time reporting. In the immediate aftermath, official figures estimated approximately 4,000 excess deaths. This number was derived by comparing mortality rates during the smog period with averages from previous winters. While significant, the estimate reflected only deaths that occurred within days of the event. It did not capture delayed fatalities resulting from prolonged respiratory damage. Medical professionals soon observed that many patients exposed to the smog experienced lasting deterioration. Individuals who initially survived later succumbed to bronchitis, pneumonia, or heart complications weeks after the fog had cleared. These delayed deaths were often recorded without reference to environmental exposure. Epidemiologists revisited the data in subsequent years. By analyzing death certificates, hospital admissions, and pollution records, they identified a sustained elevation in mortality extending well beyond December 1952. This pattern suggested that the smog's impact had been substantially underestimated. Later studies revised the death toll upward. By the late 20th century, researchers estimated that more than 12,000 deaths could be attributed to the smog. This figure included both immediate and delayed fatalities, offering a more comprehensive assessment of the disaster scale. Geographical analysis revealed uneven distribution. Areas with higher coal usage and denser housing experienced greater mortality. Socioeconomic factors played a role, as poorer districts often relied on lower quality fuel and had limited access to medical care. Age demographics further clarified vulnerability. Elderly populations were disproportionately affected, as were infants and individuals with pre-existing conditions. The smog acted as a stressor that overwhelmed already fragile health systems. The process of counting the dead was complicated by diagnostic practices of the era. Environmental causes were rarely listed on death certificates. Physicians focused on immediate symptoms rather than underlying triggers. This practice obscured the smog's role and delayed recognition. Statistical reconstruction became the primary tool for understanding the disaster. By comparing trends across time and location, researchers isolated the smog as a common factor linking excess deaths. This methodology marked an important development in public health analysis. The revised death toll reframed the Great Smog as one of the deadliest environmental disasters in modern European history. Its impact rivaled that of more visible catastrophes, despite lacking dramatic imagery. The act of counting the dead was not merely technical. It shaped public memory and policy. Recognition of the smog's true toll strengthened arguments for environmental regulation and reinforced a link between pollution and mortality. Yet even revised figures carry uncertainty. Some deaths were never documented, and long-term health impacts remain difficult to quantify. The smog's legacy includes lives shortened rather than immediately ended. Counting the dead required confronting uncomfortable truths about industrial society and public responsibility. It transformed an episode once dismissed as severe weather into a recognized public health catastrophe. The numbers emerged slowly, through analysis rather than observation. They revealed a disaster hidden in plain sight. Only when counted did the dead become visible. The Great Smog of London did not end when the fog lifted. Its most significant consequences unfolded slowly through investigation, policy debate, and institutional change. The event forced Britain to confront a reality long ignored. Industrial air pollution posed a direct and lethal threat to public health. In the months following December 1952, scientific inquiry intensified. Researchers analyzed atmospheric samples, hospital records, and mortality data to understand the mechanisms behind the disaster. Their findings established a clear link between coal combustion, sulfur dioxide concentrations, and respiratory failure. This evidence marked a turning point in environmental science. Public health authorities began to reassess long-held assumptions. Air pollution was no longer viewed as a nuisance or aesthetic problem. It became recognized as a medical hazard capable of causing mass mortality. This shift fundamentally altered how urban environments were evaluated. Political response, though gradual, gained momentum. Parliamentary debates increasingly focus on air quality regulation. The Great Smog provided undeniable evidence that existing policies were insufficient. Economic arguments defending coal use faced mounting opposition from health advocates. These debates culminated in the Clean Air Act of 1956. The legislation introduced measures to reduce smoke emissions, including the creation of smoke control areas and incentives for cleaner fuels. While implementation was uneven, the act represented a historic acknowledgement of government responsibility for air quality. The Great Smog's legacy extended beyond legislation. It influenced urban planning, industrial practices, and scientific research. Monitoring of air pollution became standardized. Environmental data collection improved. Public awareness of air quality increased significantly. Internationally, the disaster served as a case study. Cities around the world examined London's experience as they faced similar industrial challenges. The smog became a reference point in discussions of environmental regulation and public health policy. Culturally, the Great Smog entered historical memory as a silent disaster. Unlike wartime destruction, it left few physical traces. Its victims were not commemorated with monuments or memorials. Instead, its legacy lived in policy documents, scientific literature, and institutional reform. The event also reshaped perceptions of modernity. Industrial progress, once celebrated uncritically, was now understood to carry hidden costs. The smog demonstrated that technological advancement without environmental consideration could undermine human well-being. For London, the disaster marked a boundary between eras. The city's relationship with coal began to change. Gradual transition toward cleaner energy sources followed, altering the urban atmosphere over subsequent decades. The Great Smog stands as a reminder that disasters need not arrive suddenly to be devastating. Incremental harm, when ignored, can accumulate into catastrophe. The event exposed the danger of normalizing unhealthy conditions. Its legacy lies in prevention rather than remembrance. The policies and practices that emerged afterward saved countless lives, even if the victims of 1952 remained largely unnamed. The smog revealed the vulnerability of cities to invisible threats. It demonstrated that environmental conditions are inseparable from human health. London survived the Great Smog. Its air eventually cleared, but the lessons it left behind reshaped how societies understand the cost of progress.